Hey guys, welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal. I'm Jessica and I'm your host. And today we're going to be discussing our win over Leeds United, the 4-2 win. So we're going to be talking a lot about this guy here and how great he played. And we're also going to talk a little bit about this guy and how much of a clown he is. Let's get started. Tannor, one word to describe this guy here.
Can I use two words? The first thing that came into my head was frosted tips. I'm just like, you put up that picture. I'm like, what is happening here?
Hey, everybody in the chat, go ahead and use your own words to describe this clown here. Alioski. Drew, any words for Alioski?
Boy band. That's about it, really.
Wait. What'd you say, Drew?
Boy band. Looks very 1990s. Yeah.
All he needs is the gauged earring now, you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I guess him and Bamford were talking crap about Pepe before they played this game. Like they were excited to see Pepe or something, and Saka murdered Alioski over on the right-hand side. It was totally embarrassing, but very fun to watch. How are you guys doing today?
Wants it that way. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Well, worse now, so.
How are you guys today?
Depends. Yeah, got a lot of grief for being late, even though I had no link. So.
So you're just gonna say it out loud?
Yeah, that's right.
You're just gonna call me out.
Oh,
okay. You guys, I forgot to send Drew the link. Oh well, it was a mistake.
There was a few expletives slung my way, and I won't get an apology. So if you guys can chat, make sure she apologizes. That'd be awesome.
Tannor, how are you today?
Oh, I got popcorn cooking downstairs. I can't wait to see how this show turns out. And I'm just gonna be the dude from the GIF that just sits back with popcorn. And that's all it is. No, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Jess. I appreciate it. Hey, and thanks for sending me the link in a reasonable time frame.
I know I slipped up, but whatever. Everybody makes mistakes. Who cares? Okay, so it feels so much better talking about a win after the last two games, and I think ultimately the last two games felt almost like we were robbed in a way, because it wasn't like we played bad, but things just didn't go our way. And I did not predict this type of performance from Arsenal against Leeds. Drew, what did you predict before the game? Did you think that we would be able to rebound, or were you surprised by the performance like I was?
So I wrote about it like 2 days ago, and I said I expected a draw, which I thought was fair. But the morning of, I woke up and I have screen caps to prove it that I said I think we would go on and win. I don't know. Something just kind of, I guess Oba coming back was going to help, but the fact that Leeds have a lot of injuries in the back line at the moment, they're very good going forward on their day, but Leeds defensively are actually quite poor. I think they had the fourth worst defensive record in the Premier League coming into that match. So, I mean, they could score all day long if they wanted to, but gets a side with Arsenal, who can create, when everybody's fit and firing, you can cause a lot of problems. We were always going to have a chance to come up with something more. I didn't think we would go ahead and grab 4 goals. But I did think maybe the match is going to be a little bit open. We could take our chances. We go on to win. So I'm happy with how we played. I'm quite pleased Oba put in a really good performance. I like how Odegaard looked for most of his performance as well. I thought Smith Rowe and Saka keep performing every week, and that's very encouraging. Despite not having Partey in midfield, I thought Xhaka played quite well. I even thought Ceballos actually showed as well. I think everybody across the board kind of really put in a good performance. And I think Leeds only really kind of got back into it just because you're up 4-0, you switch off, you're less desirable to want to go ahead and press because there's not really the need, save your energy levels. So I'm not necessarily concerned with the fact that we allowed to. I think for the vast majority of that match, we saw a really good performance from the team, and maybe some selection headaches moving forward, which I think is a good thing, not a bad thing. yeah, I can't really find too many issues with how we played, and I'm quite happy Bayern got himself a goal. I think he defended pretty well as well. So yeah, pretty much overall happy. So.
Yeah, and we'll get into individual performances a little bit later, but Tannor, just in general, how did you predict that we would play, and were you shocked? Did you think that we would turn it around this way? Like, I was genuinely shocked by our performance yesterday.
So I'm starting to get to a point with Drew where somebody's going to need to get a scalpel and just like cut the brain in half at this point. I genuinely thought, I actually on the preview show that I do with Ryan, I predicted, I think, a 3-1 victory. In the back of my mind, though, I'm thinking I'm only doing this because I don't predict draws. But in the back of my head, I was absolutely convinced that the best we could hope for was a draw. In fact, a friend of mine that I grew up with is a big sports bettor. So every week he checks in with me on certain games and kind of asks my opinion. He said, Arsenal Leeds, what's your thought? I'm like, man, it could be 5-4. It could be 0-0. Who knows? I said, gun to my head, I think it'll be a draw. And that didn't change at all until, quite frankly, Alba's penalty. I still thought that even with the first goal and just the way we were playing in general, I just thought, man, Leeds, they don't stop. They don't stop. They're going to keep coming. They're going to get something out of this. But when Hector scored the third for us right before halftime, I felt pretty good at that point, and that's when I thought, okay, yeah, we can go on and win this thing. So, but prediction, like I say, back here, it was hope for a draw.
Yeah, for sure. I think I predicted like 3-2, but I couldn't predict who would have the 3 and who would have the 2. So, hey, I was just like one goal off. But ultimately, I was floored by the performance because we were turned on from. I don't even know if I want to say this right now. We were turned on from the very first minute.
We were switched on.
Okay, what's the word?
We were switched on. We were switched on.
We were switched on from the very first minute, and you could tell that there was like a collective energy to try to get after Leeds early. We pressed them more, just as much as they pressed us, which I thought was commendable considering they're like the best pressing team in the league right now, or they press the most. And we just played them off of the park in the first 45 minutes. But somebody that I want to single out early on in our conversation today is Aubameyang, because I feel like he's been such a divisive figure just this season, because his form he's been cold. Let's just put it that way. He's been cold. And I wasn't sure if he'd be able to regain the form that he had last season, but looking at the way that he played yesterday, and ultimately, to me, the most encouraging thing was his body language. We all know Aubameyang is an excellent finisher, but I thought his body language this entire season has been a little off. Drew, for you, how do you view Aubameyang's performance yesterday, and does that give you some, hope for the future that even though we've signed him up for this 3-year deal, that he still may come good for us?
I mean, I don't think he hasn't come good before. You see how many goals he scored for the club, and it's encouraging. But this season was the word. I mean, I don't think anyone can sit there and say that he's been good overall this season. He hasn't been, certainly, at least to the standards that he's held himself to previously in his career, both with us and Dortmund, and his final season at Tannor as well. So, yeah, I think the worry with the fans is that you're gonna have another scenario where you re-sign a player on big money, and then all of a sudden, the performances stop or become less common. I think that was a lot of the worry. It was good from him, but I think the issue with that is going to be how much are we going to create, because you can make the argument that for a while now, like Lacazette was playing because he's more willing to come and connect the midfield, and we didn't really have that player because Mesut Ozil wasn't playing. We didn't have that player behind the center forward to do that, so Lacazette was tasked in doing that, and that's not really Oba's game. It's more of, he will get involved, but it's not the same. He's not going to want to come back deeper as much as possible. He's not going to link play as often as someone like Lacazette can or will potentially, or certainly not much as someone who's going to be playing in the 10 hole. So it was good to be able to see him get on the end of chances and worry about primarily just getting an end of chances, because that's what you're really paying him for. That's what he does best. You know, get him in the final third into dangerous positions and get him chances of goal, and he took them. You could say maybe he had a slight bit of luck on one or two of the goals, but it's irrelevant. It's the position just taking up. It's the fact that he's actually taking his chances. For me, that's kind of really all I care about. So if we're prepared to, on a tactical level, make it so that his role is a little bit more simplified, and just allow players like Smith Rowe and Saka and maybe Odegaard, a few players, or even Pepe, to just get him into dangerous positions in the final third, create space for him, get him into one-on-one situation, get him on the end of service like you saw on the Smith Rowe ball, which is a kind of a prime example of what we'll kind of do. He'll isolate one defender. You know, he reads the play quite well. He always looks for service, and if you get it to him, he usually will put it away. So if you're prepared to do that, then I don't think anyone's going to really care about, you know, he re-signed for X amount of pounds per week for however many years. If he's still scoring, it's not going to matter. And that's kind of really it for me. So if we don't need a more expensive center forward anymore because of the options behind him, then I think he'll actually maybe go on and get goals again, which is kind of what we need right now. Like our XG is not very good by comparison to when you look at the kind of players we have in the 11. So yeah, just want to make it simple for him, get him goals, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it's key to kind of unpack it a little bit and try to figure out why Aubameyang was playing so well. And I think it's key when you have like three technically good players in behind him and relieving him from the pressure of being so prominent and build up. I think that's ultimately why we've seen Lacazette. You know, Lacazette's work rate is also a part of it, but his link up play was kind of allowing us to it was almost like a cheat code. But when you take Lacazette out and you put Aubameyang in, you have to have another technical player. And I think adding Odegaard in there and having Smith Rowe and Saka was the perfect foil for Aubameyang to be the striker that we know that he is. And because he's 30, 31 years old, we have to save his legs. You know, we have to save his legs because he's getting older and we don't need him running up and down the sideline for no reason. He should become a lower touch striker, kind of like a Vardy, or even like a Luis Suarez, where the young players do all the running for him and he just gets on the end of service, like Drew said. So I think that that's super, important. And I was very encouraged by his performance yesterday. And somebody that is being mentioned in the comments a lot is Ceballos. Tannor, based on yesterday's performance, would you consider bringing Ceballos in on a permanent, or do you think that it's too soon for that? Is it just one good performance and we should just wait? Or is he somebody that we could use going forward as a midfield option for 25 million from Real Madrid? I think that's the price that's being quoted.
So, yeah. Excuse me. The price, I'm a little put off by the price tag that Madrid has set on him right now. This is yesterday was the 2019-20s season. It was the Burnley match. It was the very first match at home that Dani Ceballos played. That against Burnley. That excuse me, I'm so sorry. Where he was just in the midfield. He was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant in the midfield. The thing that impresses me about Ceballos from yesterday was the fact that he's just coming back in to the team. We had talked about this yesterday. He played somewhat sparingly going back into November when Thomas Partey was fit. He was playing somewhat sparingly. Then he got injured. Now, all of a sudden, once he gets healthy, can't quite get himself back into the lineup, back into the game, even as a sub. And now he's thrown to the Wolves yesterday. Thrown to the Wolves. But you know what I mean. As a starter, through injury to Thomas Partey, and he looked like he never missed a beat. So if he can put together these kinds of performances, absolutely. For what, 22 million pounds, I think is what they quoted, 25 million euro. Yeah, I would, if he can string together it's consistency. The key in any sport is consistency. You want to be consistent. That's how you increase value. And if he's consistent with these types of performances, then that increases his value to us. And like I said, if he continues that, I would then be looking to spend that kind of money on him. However, I'm going to caveat that with, I'm very sure we'll get into him later, but just I'll say this real quick. It would also depend on Martin Odegaard's purchase price. What sort of a fee do Madrid tack on his head come the summer?
But see, here's the key with the Odegaard situation is that I foresee us being able to loan him out for another 12 months. I think it was assumed that Real Madrid didn't want to give us an option for purchase, but it may have been Arsenal that didn't want an option for purchase because we want to try before we buy. We're not in a position, to even probably purchase him at this point. So if we could loan him for another 12 months, extend the loan, that would give us the breathing room to bring in another midfielder, because I think that's where we're light at the moment. Yeah. Is midfield options, good midfield options. If we didn't have to buy Odegaard, and we have Smith Rowe and Odegaard and Thomas Partey and Xhaka, then we're looking at a scenario where we could probably bring in a Basuma, and then see what we can do about Danny. But for me, with Danny, even though I'm a big fan of Danny Ceballos, I just feel like if the funds are tight, we have to get somebody with a similar profile of Thomas Partey. We have to. I know but I think that ship has kind of sailed for me a little bit.
And again, you caveat all of this with we're mid-February right now. We still have 3 months of the season left to play. We have no idea what's going to transpire between now and then. We have no idea what's going to transpire between now and the beginning of next season in terms of expectation with players from the academy. I'll just use Miguel Aziz as an example. Now he's more of an attacker, he's not the same profile as Thomas Partey or Yves Bissouma. But it's the kind of thing where I look at Danny Ceballos, I look at the price tag, and I say, if he could put together these kinds of performances, depending on where we sit money-wise and things like that, it might be worth going down that road. I would not personally, gun to my head, go down that road. There are other options on the table. I'm with you. I know the both of you are big Yves Bissouma fans. You've been beating that drum for a while, and I'm with you 100% on that. And I would prioritize other players over Danny Ceballos right now. If Danny Ceballos were the last option, the only thing we could do, I'll just say we could do a lot worse.
Yeah. So another thing that I was thinking about is, do you guys foresee, a Danny, Odegaard, Thomas Partey midfield at some point this season? Drew, what do you think? Do you think that there's good balance there? Do you think Arteta would ever try it? Or do you think Xhaka has solidified that spot and we won't see Ceballos in that position next to Thomas?
No, I don't think so. But I think it'll depend on who the opponent is. If someone's less likely to want to press, then maybe if everyone's fit, then maybe you'll see someone like a Xhaka in, depending though. If you're playing a really high press team, then maybe you'll see something like Ceballos Partey. But it really all depends, because Xhaka, he can beat the press. He won't be able to do it on the ball himself personally. But if you have players in front of him, and the attacking players who want to make themselves available, then it's easy just to beat the press, just by making sure that you have an option. And usually a lot of times when Xhaka gives the ball away when he's being pressed by 1 or 2 men, it's because the movement ahead of him has been poor and he hasn't had a pass. And it's clear we're under instructions to more often than not try to keep the ball instead of playing, a ball forward and hope that we get on the end of it. So I'm not really concerned about that. I think Arteta has made it known through his own words that Xhaka is key for the side. I think he's going to be starting whether fans like it or not. Well, not all fans, some fans. And that's kind of it for us. I think he's been key. I think he's been exceptionally good in the last couple of months as well. I think you can see how he and Partey have been able to gel a little bit. Even he and Ceballos worked quite well. Xhaka seems to have his confidence back as well. So, I think it's just going to be the nature of it. I'm glad he's performing. I think that there's no reason to change it either. So.
isn't it nice that we're kind of talking about players that were kind of on the fringes coming into form? I think that's good. I mean, obviously Danny would have to play more games, but it's promising to me that we have Pepe that's coming into form. We have Danny that's played a good game, after quite a bit of time out, not looking so great. Even Gabriel, he looked great yesterday. He's coming back into form and going towards, pushing on towards the end of the season, where clearly the club believes that we have a chance to, climb up the table and potentially go make a deep run into the Europa League. I think it's important to start seeing players step up where they had been almost invisible or shells of themselves during that 7-game run where we didn't win any games. I think that's going to be really, really good for us moving forward throughout the season.
Let me jump in here real quick, Jess. Let's think back a few months to kind of right in the midst of the poor run of form, the winless run, and we're thinking, okay, top 4, we're going to be lucky if we stay up right now. That was the overriding, consensus among the supporter base. But we're, forget top 4, that's out of the question. And a lot of us were thinking, what are we even going to do in Europa League? Because we're going to have to rotate these players. These guys can't play. We have I think if we went through and said, okay, name your best 11, ready, go. I dare say that the 3 of us would be pretty much in agreement on the best 11, maybe a player or 2 here or there. Nobody, I think, thought that we would make any noise in Europa League. Now, all of a sudden, because these players that are in that rotation, the guys that okay, Pepe has to come in and play at some point. ESR can't carry the load with all of these minutes in the league, in Europe. We feel much better about this now because they're starting to come into form. And this is what you need to be a successful club. You need to almost be able to field 2 separate teams. If you're playing in Europe, it's not quite 2, it's not 22 players, but it's close. You're talking 16, 17, 18 players that all have to be in form and pretty much all have to do it hopefully once a week. Some will do it twice a week, but you sort of rotate through and you feel a lot better. My point being, I think we're starting to feel a lot better about our chances in the Europa League right now because these players are coming into form. We're going to right now. Do you trust Pepe? Do you trust Pepe to put in a performance on Thursday against Benfica? I'm assuming he's going to get a start. So, and you don't necessarily
Pepe does play well in Europe, in my opinion. I think he plays well in Europe. So giving him that rest, which I viewed it as rest, not being dropped.
Same as Rob Holding. Same as Rob Holding.
Yep. And Lacazette. They could all come in against Benfica. And the good thing is that they got a chance to sit there and watch the rest of their team put in an excellent performance, which means that we have more competition for places, which is something that we haven't had for a long time. We haven't had, good options in every single position. And right now, to me, the only person that really keeps their spot week in and week out, to me, like without question, is probably Saka. I think you can make a case for one or the other, like if you have to choose to the other positions, especially up top, which is a good thing, so that's something that we definitely didn't have. And
I'm curious to get Drew's take on that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting in, but I'm curious. When we were talking about Aubameyang, the one thing that came into my head and it wasn't even necessarily about Aubameyang, but it was the 3 behind him. Agents of chaos. Agents of chaos. They can play. So those 3 that played behind him yesterday, Saka, Odegaard, ESR, they could go into each other's positions. They don't need to be set in, Bukayo Saka can play through the middle, I think. But my point is, give the other team something to think about in terms of, instead of it just being, okay, well, we know ESR is going to be out on the left and he's going to stay out on the left. And we know Odegaard is going to be in the middle and he's going to stay in the middle. And Saka is going to be out on the right. They can move around. They're interchangeable. They're versatile. And they, for a player like Aubameyang, who may not himself create the chaos behind him. And when they're running around, when the defense is running around like headless chickens, that's when Aubameyang can slide into an area of space, receive the ball, one touch into the back of the net.
Yeah. And I hate to go back to Aubameyang, but some of his movement yesterday was like elite movement. Like some of the little feints and the little, just small movements that he made to get away from defenders to get the space. Like that's what we've really been missing from him. That movement, that aggressive movement, because Aubameyang he's so good at that, just getting that 5-yard space between him and the defender. And I think not having to think so much about getting back on the left-hand side to create, because that's not a part of that's not his zone of genius. Like it was really nice to see a vintage Aubameyang performance and for him to go ahead and get that hat trick. But okay, so I did want to bring up Bellerin because he, again, is another kind of like divisive figure in the Arsenal fan base. For me, I would like to see a different right back in the future. He's definitely not somebody that I'm like, he has to leave tomorrow. What are you smoking? What are you doing down there? What are you doing down there? Do you see the space? Do you see this space? Because why do I have to love Bellerin? I don't have to. I didn't
ask you to. I didn't ask you to love him.
Well, let me finish my reasonings. So
no, I don't need to listen to your nonsense.
It's not nonsense. It's not nonsense. Okay.
Man, I gotta go check on that popcorn.
So for me, I just think physically, like physicality wise, he's not the type of right back that we should have. I think we should have something more similar to Tierney. I would like to see somebody a little bit more. I think the physicality aspect is what really gets for Bellerin. He gets beat. He pops out of his pocket a little bit too often, a little bit too quick. That's just me. But that being said, statistically, he actually does really well. If you look at the graphics and the statistics around Hector Bellerin, you can see that Arsenal uses data to decide who they're playing and who they're not playing. Bellerin, a lot of what he's asked to do is from what Arteta is telling him to do. So we have to always take that into consideration. And I think we saw the best case scenario for why we let Hector Bellerin play so far up the pitch is because he gets into good positions and he could possibly score goals. I think that's what's been missing over the last couple of weeks is he's getting into the positions, but we're not getting any end product. Maybe the final ball is not good enough. The shot is not good enough. But yesterday he was on point. Drew, can you tell me, like, in your opinion, in regards to like Bellerin, why do you think he's such a divisive figure? And what benefit do you see that comes from Bellerin being the player that he is for Arsenal? Because you could probably explain it better than I can because you like him.
It's not about liking him. It's that not every fullback or wingback is the same fullback or wingback. And a lot of the fans jumped on the news about, the theories about, Max Aarons and Tariq Lamptey and those kind of players. And, they're different to Bellerin. And yes, I think a lot of what he's doing currently is what he's being asked to, but I think he's being asked to do it because he's better at this type of tasking than making overlapping runs and being asked to provide service. That's not going to be his main job. Because he was brought through La Masia as a winger, he has some decent instincts in the final third when he gets to in and around the area, especially in the box. And you saw that for his goal. He took his goal like someone who's an attacking player, not someone who's a wing back. So I think when he makes those underlapping runs, I think he's better at actually giving something like a through ball or a combination play than an overlapping run, put something into the box. That's where Tierney kind of really excels more often than not. You don't have to have both wing backs playing the same way. You don't need a Tierney on the left and a Tierney on the right. And a lot of clubs don't do that. And you saw it at City as well. They started using underlapping runs from their fullbacks instead. When Arteta was there still on staff, you saw it. So it's very possible that he's taken that and brought it into Arsenal, and he's wanting for Bellerin to play that way. And I'm perfectly fine with it. If it works tactically and we see performances like yesterday for Bellerin more common, then there's no reason to talk about spending 40 or 50 million pounds on money we may or may not have on someone who may or may not upgrade on Hector Bellerin. I think we have bigger concerns first for me, particularly in the spine as well. I'd rather take that 50 million and get Basuma and stay with Bellerin for another year. and then see how it shakes out then. But there's really nothing that, I get it. People want someone that's a little bit more exciting as a wing back. They want something more akin to like Trent, for example, or Hakimi, but they forget that Trent is he's tasked in a different way to Bayern, and Hakimi is better as a right wing back and a back three than on a back four. And you have to do a lot of retasking in your team to cover the fact that Hakimi tries to get into the final third every single time your team's in possession. So it's a little bit different. Bayern has, he's not always consistent with it, but he's more willing to be slightly defensive minded, whereas some of these other players just want to bomb forward constantly all the time. And I don't think that Arteta's going to want that from them. I think it's going to depend on what their tasks are, what their role for the day is, how we look tactically with balance. So I think we have bigger issues in the team that we need to figure out first. And people forget that Bayern's first choice in the defensive group that is one of the better in the Premier League this season. So to say that he's been poor, or people think that he's one of the reasons why we're held back, I think is harsh. I think that's kind of it for me. So I could see why fans want to upgrade. I just feel like that upgrade isn't necessary yet. And fans forget that he's still only 25. He's been here forever. He's not even in his prime yet. Players evolve over time. Yes, he may have lost his legs to his injuries, but you don't need to be a pacey wingback to be a very effective wingback either. So, yeah, just like for me, I guess it'll come down to preference, and a lot of people won't necessarily agree with that, and that's okay. But yeah, I see bigger issues we need to put that money towards first. But also depends. Like, say for example, we sell quite well in the summer. Say we have spare money to maybe upgrade on him, or at least bring in someone who's a different profile to rotate. That's fine then. But if say we don't finish in Europe in the league, say we get, we don't win Europa League, we finished, 8th or 9th, with the way finances are going because of coronavirus and the model that the club have. If we have a very limited amount of money, the last thing we should be doing is worrying about upgrading on him, whereas we have other issues first. That's kind of it for me. It's not the priority, but if it's something that you can maybe do, then sure. So.
Tannor, what are your thoughts on Bellerin, his performance, and what is your overall view on Bellerin? Because he's so polarizing. Even the comments are, some people love him and some people just can't stand him.
Once again, we gotta quit having Drew and I on the same show. It's just nobody's entertained by this. It's agreement after agreement after agreement.
You agree with him?
I agree with him on the sentiment that there are far bigger problems that we need to address before we go.
I agree with that too.
At the end of the day, we could be doing a lot worse than Hector Bellerin at right back. Number one. So let's fully understand that, and we can improve in other areas. And improving in other areas may, for those that don't rate Hector Bellerin, may help him improve in areas where those people think he needs to improve. He is polarizing. I wish he were more defensively responsible. That's my biggest take from Hector Bellerin. I wish he were more defensively responsible. I like Drew said, he came up as a winger, so he has instincts there. And I suggested a while back, when we couldn't seem to progress the ball through the midfield, really before Thomas Partey got into the flow of things, I said, it was half joking, but I'm like, at this point, we need something. So put Hector in at midfield. Why not? At least we know if he's got 20 yards of space in front of him, he'll dribble into it. We know that. So I like the runs that he makes. I like his attacking instincts. I wish he were it's his defense. That's what it is for me. I think that can be improved upon. I think Drew is right. He's only 25. He still has yet to really settle into his prime. I think he's coming into it now because he's been hampered with a string of injuries, one of which was obviously the knee. That's a devastating injury. But he's been saddled with multiple injuries. So this is really the first run of consistent play that he's had in 2 to 3 years, So, and Drew's right. He's the first choice in one of the best defensive setups in the league. So there's something to be said for that. As I sit here and say, I wish he were more defensively responsible, but I'm not necessarily looking to look. Everybody has a price. If somebody comes in here and offers us $50 million for Hector Bellerin, as long as I can replace him, that's the kind of thing where $50 million for Hector Bellerin, I can take that money and replace like for like. You know what I mean?
That's a different discussion, though. I feel like if you ask anybody, anyone in this fan base would sell him for $50 million.
50's high.
We ain't getting 50.
I should have said 30.
25 max.
I think that's also harsh, but that's a whole other debate. But I feel like if you were to say,
he just doesn't want to agree with me. Do you see this?
If you were to ask anybody, like, would you take 35 million for him tomorrow or 40 million? Like, if PSG came in and they offered silly money or something, yes, anybody would take it, and you'd be silly not to. But then the question is, would we reinvest it wisely? That's the other question.
Well, yeah, and like you said, that's a whole different, whole different can of worms.
Yeah. So if we're talking about just do we keep him or do we spend money we might not be able to afford on replacing him and then keeping him, like that's all. Those are two different questions for me, and I think I have two different answers, and I think most people probably would too. So
I'm in no hurry to sell him. I sell if the offer comes in and the offer is right, simply because that's just smart business. But I'm not actively looking to sell Hector Bellerin at this point because the probability that you upgrade on him right now, considering the other areas of need in the squad, are, I would say, slim to none. I keep seeing people out said, Cedric is far better than Bellerin at certain things. Yes,
not far better. I think that's
but
not
so overwhelmingly better that you say no. Cedric should be the starting right back week in, week out.
We need to see him at right back. I mean, ultimately, we've seen him almost the entire time that he's been at Arsenal. He's only started to play. And he's played at left back. So we haven't seen him play on the right. I think, would I like to see Cedric there? Yeah. But at this point, it's not like this pressing thing where it's like he has to play over Hector Bellerin. My thing with Hector Bellerin, why do I keep saying Hector Bellerin? What is that? Why do I keep saying the whole name?
It's very sing-songy.
I don't know why I'm doing that. But the thing with Bellerin for me is just the physicality aspect, which I know he's never going to have, because that's just, at this point, he's grown into the body that he's going to have. So he's always going to be kind of a little bit more lightweight. And for me, that's not my personal preference when it comes to defenders. I don't want my defenders getting bullied. But the final ball, if the final ball, we can take advantage of him being in those good positions a lot more, then it's fine. I mean, for now, like, we're just not in a position to start selling all of the players that we don't like. And I just think we've kind of lumped a bunch of players in a basket all together. Like, all these players need to be thrown out, but it has to be layered. It's not going to be able to happen that quickly. Like somebody said, it's not like FIFA. You know?
And that's the thing with this fan base, isn't it? I mean, we see this daily on Twitter. We need to sell all of our bad players, or all the players that we don't like. We need to sell them. And believe me, there's somebody out there that will buy them for 90 million pounds. All of them. They'll buy every single bad player for 90 million pounds each. And we need to go out and we need to buy the Leo Messis and the Ronaldos and the Neymars and the Mbappes of the world. And we need to do it for 10 million pounds each because we're Arsenal and we can. It's our divine right to do those things. And it's not FIFA. It doesn't work that way. If you want to sell a player, you got to have somebody to buy the player. Exactly. You can't sell a player that nobody wants to buy.
And the player has to want to leave as well. And that's another thing that Arsenal fans never take into consideration, is that you can't just sell somebody who doesn't say, you know what, okay, I want to leave.
That is the he who shall not be named argument for the last 3 years. You want to sell him. There are teams out there that'll buy him. He don't want to leave. What do you do?
Exactly.
What do you do?
So I did want to pivot just a little bit to the overall, I think this is the first time that I felt like really confident in the fact that I'm seeing real change and I'm seeing a real foundation being built in terms of the way that we play stylistically. I do think it's a little much for us to ask, like, for him to have a very distinct style, because modern coaches don't have distinct styles. And the reason for that is because they change their tactics to suit the opponent. That's not how new managers don't play like that. but we're starting to build on certain fundamentals and patterns of play and things like that. And I'm starting to see those more often and against different types of opponents, and those things working, so I'm feeling a little bit more confident about what we're doing and that the project is moving in the right direction, even though sometimes we're not getting the results that we probably think we should be getting. So for you, Drew, are you feeling like we're moving in the right direction? And are you seeing like true improvement from Arteta? Is that what you're seeing, or am I overplaying it a little bit?
No, I think there's improvement, and I think you could point to it, in the Wolves' performance. I think everyone agrees that we were really hard done by the result, and for two spells of bad luck, and one was a bad call, and one was just a fluke from a keeper that doesn't make that many mistakes. That result probably goes another way, and some would postulate that we played quite well against Villa as well despite losing. So, and all that came to the fore, and you saw those same principles against Leeds, and they just came off well at the end of the day, which is the only difference. So, I do think we're seeing improvement. It's not perfect yet. We need to see some consistency now in that. Like, it's all well and good if you look good when you're in possession and look good in the final third, but if you're not putting the chances away, it's irrelevant at the end of the day. So, the hope is that Aubameyang gets refiring and Lacazette keeps firing when he's playing. And I think it's clear now that the youngsters are being consistent performers, some of the most consistent performers. Smith Rowe has always looked quite good, apart from maybe one of his performances. And Saka, for me, right now, is probably player of the season for us. And that probably isn't really going to change at the moment. So if Odegaard actually comes in and he suits and he settles well, and so far, if you read some of his comments, recently says that he feels more welcome and at home here, that he's already settling, he feels confident. That's a good sign. So if he can hit the ground running for us, that'd be big. So whether we buy him or not is irrelevant. It's just what he does from now until the end of the season when his loan is over. So if those players keep firing, if our strikers are putting chances away, I think we'll see an upturn in results. But I think the tricky balance is going to come with how we negotiate Europa League. So, for years we've always kind of seen where like a poor run or a poor, like say we get knocked out of Europa League by Benfica, just as an example, will that affect our performances in the league? We've seen that in the past before. So we'll see. But so far, I'm happy with what we're seeing. I think a lot of fans maybe have this notion that the league is tight and we're mucking it up by not being more in contention for Europe, and it's not really that easy. We had a lot of issues this year to negotiate. We haven't had Thomas Partey fit, all year really. Tierney's been in and out with injuries, and that's been a concern. So we're missing two very key players to how we want to play for a lot of points this season. So it's difficult to negotiate that. But overall, yeah, I'm pretty confident we'll be all right. I don't know if we're going to get Europe this year, but I just want to see improvement in the areas that you can say we can take those principles, and if you apply them to next season, that will kind of grow into that. And then next year, there's a one you can say, okay, well, it's Europe or bust. It doesn't matter if it's Champions League or Europa, like we have to finish like top 6 next year, kind of thing for me. So if we see enough this year, you'll be able to make that argument. So for me, that's kind of all that matters.
Tannor, what do you think? Are you seeing true improvement? Are you feeling confident about the direction that we're going in, or are results king and the results are the only thing that matters at this point? What do you think? We can't hear you.
Rookie mistake. You'd think this was my first time. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think both can exist at the same time. I mean, at the end of the day, it's professional sports. It's a results-driven business. So results are always going to matter. But the improvement, I think you're starting to see it. And as much as I hate what I'm about to say, perhaps no Europe next year is what is needed to just sort of save the squad and really judge the progression in the league, because that's where you see the true improvement is in the league and the standing. Europe is it's basically just it's not essentially a knockout competition in the true sense of the phrase, but anything can happen over the course of 2 legs, and then certainly anything can happen in a 1-game final. So, I do see progression. I do see that there is a style, and we're starting to see what it is that Arteta is expecting out of not just the team overall, and the overall tactics, but the tactics of each individual player on the pitch. You're starting, every player seems to be, this is your job. This is what I expect from you, Granit Xhaka. This is what I expect from you, Hector Bellerin. This is what I expect from you, Kieran Tierney. This is what I expect from you, Thomas Partey, or Danny Ceballos, whoever it might be. So each individual player has his own responsibilities, and I think we're starting to see that start to come in more into focus now. So I'm coming around on the idea that maybe Europe isn't it may not be the best thing in the world for us next year.
Well, you said, so you're something that it just kind of popped into my head when you just said that being outside of Europe might be a good thing for us. And there was somebody in the comment section, I forget who said it, but they said that we looked really prepared for this game against Leeds. And we also had a full week off. We didn't have a midweek game. Maybe that's something that we could look forward to, is Arteta having more time on the training pitch to get his ideas across to this team, so that we could be able to do better in the not in the Europa League, in the league. Because like you said, the league is really where he's going to be judged. How high we get in the league. Right. Now that puts more pressure on him if we're outside of Europe, because that means that there's no excuse, right? We could play our best team essentially every single week, barring any crazy injuries. But I would like to see that. I would like to see Arteta being able to get these boys on the pitch like for an entire week to prepare for games, because if what we get is what we got against Leeds, a really prepared team that looks fresh and ready to play, and they don't have the distraction of Europe, I'm interested in that.
Well, and let's think about it too. All of this, there's so many catch-22s involved with all of this, right? It's you want Europe, but I'm going to scroll back up through the comments here. AFC Red Room, no, Europe really hurts our summer business. Well, of course it does. There's less money then. But like you just said, it gives you more time on the training pitch. So it gives Arteta more time with the players to instill his system, his ideas, but then take that a step further. The catch to that is you can't replicate game speed, right? So sure, we can practice it all we want, but we need to translate it to a game. And not getting that midweek match, does that hinder the process as well? So there are a lot of good pros to the argument. There are a lot of good cons to the argument. It will be in this realm. It will forever be the $1 million question: to play in Europe or not to play in Europe.
It's tricky. I don't mean to butt in, but yeah, it's tricky. Sometimes the reset button has to be a full reset button. It doesn't mean in terms of blowing up the squad, but I can tell you, like, as somebody who, I've been coaching for a very long time, and I can tell you the thing I hated the most when looking at the fixture list is when you had a congested week, when you played 2 and 3 matches in 1 week, getting less actual time in to actually train, and not just about recovery, not just about worrying about your players' fitness, and not having to worry about just trying to focus on the next match and what to fix the match before. But you need that time to get in other things. And when you don't get it, it does make things a little bit harder to really kind of nail down what you want to do. So I'm not saying necessarily want to be out of Europe, but if we were out of Europe, I think it actually would speed up the process. And with certain different areas, you're already seeing the improvement with Arteta, I think. But the argument is, would we have seen it faster if we weren't in Europe, this season, last season, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. It's tricky for me. Yes, I take the financial argument into account, because we don't have owners like an Abramovich who are going to give us money to spend no matter what. Being out of Europe means we might struggle to recruit in the summer, not just financially, but I hate to break it. Yes, we're still a big club, but there are a lot of players who don't want to go to a club that doesn't have Europe, even if it's a big club. That the argument would be, if we go after Hudson Edward, because he's been in the news today. and we're coming at him without Europe and competition with Aubameyang for a place. Would he pick Arsenal over, I don't know, a club
Leicester.
no, well, he wouldn't play over Vardy, but what if there's a club that comes in for him who also can offer him Europe if we don't have it, and he'd be starting? Would he go to Arsenal because we're Arsenal, or would he go to a place where he's also getting Europe and he's also first choice? Like, these are the kind of things you have to think about when you're talking about player recruitment.
But I also think that might be a leg up for us. We're in a long-term project. So quite frankly, I mean, if they don't want to be a part of the project, then it is what it is. You know, a lot of people will just come because they want to play in Europe because that gives them more opportunities to make more money, you know,
Sure.
in their bonus structures, you know, so that may give us a chance that might put pressure on Edu and whoever's a part of his recruitment staff to find players that actually want to be a part of this project for the long term. That doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to be able to get good players, because look at other teams that aren't in Europe are able to recruit well. They just recruit better than us. Do you not think that that's a possibility too? That might be a good thing for us too?
I think it is, but I think it's always a player by player basis. There's no run of the mill way to look at it. It's not, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be for every player. Every player has their own wants and wishes and desires and such. You know what I mean? So there will be players who want to slide in because they may look at us, if they're younger, but they may look at us and say, well, look at the chances that Saka and Smith Rowe have gotten. You know, that could be me. You can look at that instance, or you can look at other players who are young and ambitious and want to start every week, and they might not be okay with rotation. They might not be okay with New York. It just depends. Depends on the player. Depends on what our project looks to other people. So yeah, I don't know, but go on.
Go ahead, Drew. Go ahead. You finish.
I'm finished. Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in terms of recruitment, number one, without Europe, that player that might be, let's just say 20 million for a team with European football to offer, all of a sudden becomes 25 for us because we don't have that to offer. His wage might be 80,000 a week, but without Europe, well, now that wage goes up to 100,000 a week. And so there's that to take into consideration as well. It's the, we're not as good. We can't offer the things that other teams offer. So we have to offer more money. That's what we can offer over some other teams. We have to offer you more money. And in terms of recruitment, the players, if we don't have Europe next year and we go into the summer recruitment process, we can't offer Europe. We need to be looking, as much as I hate to say this, at, well, Yves Bissouma would be a great example at a Brighton team, because a player like that would view Arsenal as a step up from Brighton. But even go down into the Championship. And I know that a lot of Arsenal fans don't want to hear this because, oh, that's second tier. It's whatever they think it is. But the fact is, there's a lot of talent down there. And go raid Brentford, for crying out loud. Just
go get Ivan Toney. I mean, if we can't get Edouard, Ivan Toney. I'm sure he wouldn't turn us down. And
those players will look at the move to the Premier League without Europe, because look, they weren't going to get Europe to begin with. So they're going to look at the move to the Premier League and a move to a club like Arsenal as a step up in their career. And that seems to be the one thing that this club has not done. I can't remember the last time we looked down to the Championship to try to recruit players that are going to come up here. And I've been beating this drum for a while with Mikel Arteta. He does better with younger players. He can go to the younger players and get them to buy into the system. You need the veteran presence around to carry the young guys through the year, but he's going to do better with younger players. And that, the recruitment thing, that's what I have to say on that. So
yeah, that makes total sense.
That's all I have to say about that.
I know that we veered kind of like away from the actual game, but all of this kind of ties into, because game, like on a game-to-game basis, it doesn't really matter because we know we're in a long-term project. So a lot of our conversations end up getting really macro, because that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about a project and where we are in it at this point with Arteta. So we're going to get into the question section now. We're at about 55 minutes. So we want to get about 15 minutes of questions in. So you guys, again, if you want to get your questions in, just make sure it's obvious that it's a question so that we can, we don't skip you. And also smash the likes. I'm You guys are in here. There's about 50 people watching, so we want to see about 50 likes. If you don't like it, dislike it. Do whatever you want. Just make sure you get on there and do something. So, but I want to start out with a quick question for the panel. So you guys can go ahead and start putting in your questions too. Who starts against Benfica after Aubameyang had a great game at center forward, which is position. I know he's playing kind of like off the left, but he was a center forward yesterday. Do we start Lacazette or do we start Aubameyang? What do you think, Drew?
Depends on who also is starting. Depends on the players that are going to be behind him. If it's not going to be similar to what we saw at the weekend, then you probably have to start Lacazette. But it also kind of maybe depends on who Arteta sees as his first choice and what competition he wants to genuinely prioritize. If he sees Oba as his first choice again, and he wants to prioritize Europa League, then we're probably going to see Oba against Benfica, and you'll see Lacazette maybe at the weekend. Especially against City, when you might have to work just a little bit harder and be okay with dropping deeper more consistently. Maybe tactically, Lacazette works better, but you still might see them both. I'm not really sure. If Pepe starts on the left and maybe one of Emile Smith-Rowe and Odegaard gets dropped for the match, from that draft, however you want to phrase it, then you might see another change. I really don't know. It's tricky because we're just not in his head, right? We don't know what he's doing these matches as. We don't know.
But what would you do, Drew? Even if you can't get in Arteta's head, what would you want to see? Do you want to see Aubameyang or do you want to see Lacazette?
I don't know. I have biases both ways for different reasons. I think if I was playing Arteta's system, I think if I wasn't changing anything, if I went with the same 11, I would stick with Aubameyang just because of how much creativity is behind him in those three. But if I'm switching it, then maybe I'll go with Lacazette if I want to do more. Benfica are going to be tricky. They're not having the best season they've ever had domestically, from what I know of them. I think they're sitting in third. I don't really quite remember, but they have quality. You do have to put in a performance against them, but they're not typically. They can be very off at the back. From what I know, I'm not well up on Portuguese football, but from what I do remember watching them in Europe and the matches I had seen, they can be inconsistent at the back. I think it's Europe's one of those things where you need to take your chances. So maybe going with a finisher like Oba makes more sense than Lacazette, just because of he's recognized as a brilliant finisher. But if you want someone who's going to come back and actually pitch in more without the ball and press and link play a little bit better, then I'd go with Lacazette. So I honestly can't choose because this will take me a half an hour to talk with myself about. So.
And we don't want that. Tannor, what do you think? Who do you want to start?
Who do I want to start?
Yeah, because we're not in Arteta's
head. Who do I want to start? Aubameyang.
Yeah.
Coming off the heels of his performance yesterday, it's the answer is Aubameyang. You want to see if he can just, again, consistency, right? You kind of don't want to interrupt that. But that being said, I think there's a way to get the result we want with going with Lacazette, Pepe, and I'll even throw Martinelli in the mix as well. Lacazette's more of a hold-up type of center forward. You have Pepe, who's a more direct player. You have Martinelli, who's a more direct player. So maybe that's you just sort of switch things up a little bit tactically, at the top of the formation with Lacazette, Pepe, Martinelli in there and let the two wingers be the guys that are going to try to cut back in and make the more direct runs. Lacazette's more of that hold up player. So I can see a path for a lot of different lineups on Thursday, and it will be a very interesting. I can't wait for an hour before to see the lineup. I really can't. I'm buzzing because I'm just curious as to what he's going to do. So
yeah,
I think there's something there to what I just said, and maybe I'm crazy, but I wouldn't mind seeing a Lacazette in the middle of Martinelli on the left and Pepe on the right. And I know that's strange to say Pepe on the right because he's been playing so well on the left, but his left foot is more dominant, and you let him cut back into the middle. You let Martinelli cut back into the middle and let them make the more direct runs. That's just, and I'm sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I would like to see us be a little economical in what we're doing and not try to put too much of our resources out there against Benfica, because I think in the form that some of our players are in, we should be able to get past them without having to put everybody out there. So like you said, Tannor, I think I'd like to see Lacazette with Martinelli and somebody else on the right. And then obviously one of ESR or Odegaard, because we have City at the weekend. And I would like to see us actually give a good go against City. I know that that's maybe like why, but I would love to see us at home with all of our new shiny toys, go out there and really try to play against them. So I think that Pepe, Martinelli and Lacazette could do it against Benfica and then bring people in after if something, if it doesn't work.
And remember one thing for this too. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have 5 substitutes that we can use in Europa League. So keep that in mind as well, because I understand it's kind of dirty pool, so to speak, to sub someone off in the first half. But as a coach, your job isn't making friends. Your job is winning games, developing your players, and building a winner. Are we really doing this again? Are we really doing this again? I'm done. I'm not going to say a word. Moving on. If the system isn't working in the first half, remember during the restart when we would get those little water breaks, right? How well did we come out of those breaks? Because he had a moment to make an adjustment, and it was brilliant. More often than not, we came out of those breaks and we were fantastic. With the 5 substitutes, he can't be afraid to simply say, look, it's not working. I have to change something. If it's not working in the first 25 minutes, fix it. Make a change. Make a change. You have 5 substitutes, use them. That's the one nice thing about this is the 5 substitutes. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the Manchester City thought. I want the best 11. The exception probably of David Luiz, in taking injury out of the equation for a minute. If Kieran Tierney's not healthy, if Thomas Partey is not healthy, the only change I would make from yesterday against Manchester City is Rob Holding for David Luiz. That's the only change I make. Okay. Now, if Kieran Tierney's healthy, obviously he goes in. If Thomas Partey is healthy, obviously he goes in. Other than that, I keep everything the same for Manchester City. So I'm lining up Thursday against Benfica with that in mind. But Europa League at this moment is also our best path to Champions League.
Yeah. So I do think we have to really try to
make a push
for it, but
at this point you have to prioritize both.
Yeah.
We're not so far out of the league to say, nope, we're done prioritizing this. All of the eggs are in the Europa League basket, because it's been such a topsy-turvy, league this year. Just it's almost like, look, I mean, Liverpool. And the fact that they're winless in their last 7 or something like that. I mean, their run is it's crazy the way that things are going. The only guarantee in this league right now, I think, is the fact that City are going to start to run away and hide here.
Yeah,
with the league, they're going to win it, but we're just not out of it. A lot of things need to happen, and it's not one of those, mathematically we're still we string together some wins here, and we need help.
Yeah,
but the league is not. Top 4 is not completely out of the equation. So
right. Exactly.
It's not so far out of the equation to say, as I said again, prioritize Europa League. You've got to prioritize both. So
exactly.
All hands on deck.
So I want to get into something, because we need to talk about David Luiz. We need to talk about him because there's a question up here from Russ Morgan. Thank you so much. He's asking, does David Luiz keep his center back spot going forward? And you've already said that you would like Rob Holding to come back in. I'm the exact same way. I think our best center back pairing at this point does not involve David Luiz. But with the news coming out that he's potentially going to get a 1-year extension, how are we feeling about that? Like, I'm just gonna give my 2 cents really quick on this. Is I don't like David Luiz, and I don't like his brand of experience and his brand of his leadership, because on the pitch, that's all I can see. I can't see what's going on behind the scenes. I know that what they're telling me is that he's really good with the younger players. He's very influential in terms of, getting Martinelli to sign a new deal, getting Saka to sign a new deal. I love those things. But there's always, like, what happened with David Luiz against Wolves was very detrimental to our season. And even if he wasn't trying to trip William Jose, the fact that he is who he is putting us in jeopardy. So we've lost potentially 3 to 6 points because of a single player. And he doesn't even play every single game. All he has to do is play one game and we lose 6 points. I know that may seem harsh, but I can't get over it. Like, another year of potentially this. I know people are like, well, he's going to play probably a limited amount of football. But you see, even with the limited amount of football that he's playing now, we're still paying for the fact that he's David Luiz and the league just doesn't see him as a defender that can actually defend. We're paying for it. That being said, there was always a chance that he was going to get this extension because Mikel Arteta likes David Luiz. He likes his influence. So for me, seeing that he's going to get this 1-year extension is kind of, it's annoying, but I'm okay with it as long as he's a backup. And this whole idea that he has all this experience and he's great for the young players, don't we think that it might be beneficial for somebody like William Saliba to be getting that type of, influence from David Luiz? Since he's so good with the young players, wouldn't it be nice to bring him back into the fold so that he can learn under somebody who plays the position that he plays? I think it's weird. Like, for me, if David Luiz comes back in and gets the extension and William Saliba stays out, I don't know how I feel about that. I think that irritates me, is that Saliba is being made to stay out and we're giving more time to somebody who can actually be a benefit to William Saliba, who is our long-term future. I'm done with my rant. Do you want to add on to I don't really have a question, but I had to get that out there because it's annoying, but it's almost like we knew it was going to happen.
No, it's well said. Does he keep his spot going forward? The answer should be no. The answer should be no. Now, that being said, we do need depth. Injuries are going to happen. It's a part of the game. Could we do worse than David Luiz? Probably not by much, but we could do worse than David Luiz as a 5th or 6th option. I think when we look at the team, if you try to predict the center backs for next year, Gabriel Magalhaes, Rob Holding, Pablo Marie, I would like to think William Saliba, this McGuinness kid that's out on loan right now is an absolute unit. He is, by all accounts, going to break into the senior team next year. So where does that leave David Luiz? David Luiz should be the little box on the wall that says, in case of emergency, break glass. That's what David Luiz should be. I don't hate it. I like that you do need some veteran leadership in a dressing room, and he will bring that. Do I like his style of leadership per se? Well, like you said, Bukayo Saka signed, and apparently David Luiz had a lot to do with that. So I think you could do worse. And I think if as long as he's in the right situation, as long as he understands that, okay, look, you're going to be the emergency central defender. You're going to be kind of far down in the pecking order. We will throw you some League Cup games in a group, if we get into Europe, a group stage match here and there, but you're not going to be a guy that's relied upon in big games, in important matches. You're just not going to get a shirt. So if he understands that and he's willing to, whatever the money is, would like to think that at this point, stay in London, you're comfortable, kind of, ride out the twilight years of your career here. We'll pay you a livable wage, in footballing terms anyway. It's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. But again, I need to caveat that with he needs to be 5th or 6th down that pecking order of center backs. So
I agree. Drew, I want to bring you in on this one too, before you go, because I know you have to go in like 5 minutes or so. So just give us your ideas on the whole David Luiz situation and, how you're feeling about it.
I'm not surprised about it. And sorry, I'm off cam now. I've got work to finish, so I'm trying to just focus on that as well before I leave. Yeah, I'm not surprised, but I think if we're looking to extend him, I think it shows you that there's a lot of questions around Saliba's future. I think we might also cash in on Mavropanos, who he's come on well at Stuttgart. Doesn't start every week, but he's the kind of player. He's a very Mislintat signing. He's someone that Mislintat scouted when he was in Greece in the first place. That's why he came to Arsenal. He suits their system. It's a good long-term signing for a club who are trying to just find some stability and good options in the market where they might not be able to always compete for signings. So if we cash in on him, that's extra cash in the bank to put towards another player in the summer. And if he doesn't really have a first four choice center back future at Arsenal, there's no reason why we shouldn't be cashing on Mavropanos as an example. So I think Luis makes sense because you still do need one experienced center back at the club to help bring along your younger players. And I know people might not rate Luis's experience or the fact that he does make mistakes, even though all players make mistakes. But the fact is there hasn't really been many players that have said anything other than positive things about how he is such a good influence to younger players in the dressing room, on the training pitch, really helping them settle, offering them guidance. You do need those kind of players. And when you're talking about squad building, veterans are important. And Tannor and I have spoken about this before. You know, we always like to go back to hockey references because we're big hockey guys as well. But if you look at a hockey squad, there's always one or two players that are 33, 34, 35, 36 who they don't get a lot of minutes every night, but they're invaluable to the coach. They're essentially, one of their kind of think of them like non-commissioned officers in a way. I'll use military references too. Like they do help them have that connection between the squad and management. That's actually really important in all sports, football, hockey, whatever, American football, whatever sport you want to talk about. So I think that's the way they're looking at it there. And he's getting up there in age now. This could be his last contract. He might just retire after this, could go back to Brazil, could go to MLS. You don't really know what he's going to do, but if he's okay with being fourth or fifth, on the chart, I'm fine with that. I think that's what the club would tell him as well. You'll get the League Cup minutes, you'll get FA Cup minutes. You might get a Europa League performance if it's group stage against someone like a Molde as an example. But I don't think he'll be first choice moving forward. I think you're looking at Gabriel Holding. That's the primary, which is why Holding has been extended. I don't think we're going to look to buy a center back, really. If you extend Luis, Holding is there. Gabriel is there. Mari showed himself to be pretty solid when he played. If you bring in someone like McGuinness is your fifth younger player who will rotate in when he gets that time, I think that's what you might be looking at. I'm fine with that. I think it's something that you need. So, yeah. Again, Maxwell kind of said the same thing. I just let you put it on the chat. I'm not looking at the chat, so I saw that you put it on the screen. Maxwell and I kind of think somewhere along those lines. You still need that experience in your team. You do. You can't have a squad of 30 players with nothing but 24-year-olds, 23-year-olds. It doesn't work that way. So, yeah, I'd be fine with it. And Mari doesn't have the experience at the top level that someone like Luis does. So you do need at least one player that can offer you that. So I'm fine with it. As long as it's not going to be like a Willian situation where we're going to be paying David Luiz £250,000 a week to may or may not play, then I wouldn't be okay with it. But if the money's fine, I think it's necessary. So yeah, that's kind of for me. I do have to dip though. So thanks for having me on. So yeah.
All right.
Drew, good to talk to you, man. Good to see you, bud.
See you later.
Thanks, buddy. See you guys later. Thanks, chat, for being there as well. So yeah.
Bye. So yeah, basically I echo everything that you guys said about David Luiz, and I have my personal things about David Luiz, like just in terms of like I think he makes mistakes and he's not the type of defender that I like, but if he's there for experience. I just would like William Saliba to get the opportunity to get to benefit from that type of experience as well, because he's our long-term future. He still has to be, we've invested so much in him that it would really disappoint me if he didn't come back in next season. And I have been watching him play with Nice, and he looks to me like he could come back to Arsenal, and I'd like to see him fail at the Emirates first before he
succeeds somewhere else. Yeah. The thing with Saliba, and I'm gonna, for a while, I not now, but if we would have had this conversation 2 months ago, I would throw Pepe into this. They're not Mikel Arteta signings. They were brought in by a different regime. And I just there's something that he just doesn't like about their game. I think Pepe's kind of played his way into the conversation with Arteta. But Saliba, there's been a lot of personal stuff behind the scenes. As far as I know, both of his parents recently passed. I know his mother did. So, guy that doesn't really speak a lot of English coming to England, the country that invented the language, for crying out loud. There were a lot of things going on with him. And I think football kind of took a back seat for him, which is understandable. You have to keep in mind the human element of this. These guys are human beings first and foremost. But I just don't think that Arteta rates Saliba very highly. I would not be shocked at all if he is sold in the summer. It would not shock me. It would not shock me at all if he's sold in the summer.
That's unfortunate.
And if Rob Holding is extended, well, he is extended. You bought your high profile center back last year in Gabriel. Pablo Mari has shown what he can do. Like Drew said, he just doesn't have the experience at the top level. And we keep talking about wanting to see academy players come through. Well, we have one in this McGuinness kid, and by all accounts, and I kind of wish Ryan were here to speak on this because he would know better than I. But this kid he's a stud. He's going to be an absolute stud. And it's congested. The fact is, it's congested. So I think if David Luiz gets this year extension, I almost think that's a precursor to William Saliba being sold. It just strikes me as that. And
I can't accept that.
It's not, but you have to look at it from you can't look at it from the playing standpoint, because I'm not sure that William Saliba comes back into this next year. I'm not sure he comes back into the fold next year and is the starter. I'm not.
Here's my thing. I hear what you're saying. But as we've said, we need depth, right?
Yeah.
Chambers is not going to be here. I think Chambers is on his way out.
Sold, and that's the one I forgot to mention. Yeah.
So hear me out. And I know my camera's getting a little blurry. It should come back, but
no, you're good.
Gabriel and Saliba, Mari and Holding, David Luiz. If you have it, that's the perfect balance of youth, experience, depth. Like, that would be the perfect scenario. If you get rid of Chambers and you don't bring Saliba back, we need to bring another center back in. And you're saying McGuinness, but we haven't spent any money on McGuinness. Like, we're not going to get money back for Saliba that we paid for him. So I think we have to find a way to at least see if he can work out before we just get rid. I think the people that we spend money on are the priority because of the resources. Well, not because that's me.
But it's also, you have to look at it also from the business side of it. And because you've brought in new, I'll basically just say heads of football. You have Edu and Arteta. And if they see something here that they just don't like, then it may be a simply cut your losses. And sometimes in business, you just have to do that. So there's a business side of this that we need to keep in mind. And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm with you. I very much want to see William Saliba pull on an Arsenal shirt and let's see what the kid can do. I want to see that. I think to assume he would be the starter next year that's a bit ambitious. The starter next year is going to be Rob Holding. The number one pairing will be Holding and Gabriel. The number two pairing, Saliba could slide into that if he comes back in.
If that's the case, he's not going to come back because this kid clearly believes that he's ready to start games. So if that's the case, then it's a done deal. I don't see Saliba sitting behind Holding. I just don't see it.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've watched him a lot at Nice. I see the things that people say, and I will caveat it with this. And I'm coming across, I feel like maybe as a William Saliba hater, and I'm not. It's just, I think you have to look at things realistically. And the fact that he's now been sent out on loan again, to me, just says that I think we're putting him in the shop window to say, okay, we're not sold on this kid. Or there's just something with this kid that we don't want here at Arsenal. Put him in the shop window, see what we can recoup in the 27 million that we spent on him. And you're right, he may not want to come back and play second fiddle to Rob Holding, and maybe he shouldn't. I would like to see him get the opportunity, but there's a business side of this that you have to keep in mind as well. And if you bring him back and you ride it and he rides the bench as second choice and he can't overtake Rob Holding on the depth chart, you're lessening his value. So sending him on loan to Nice for 6 months, who knows? Somebody comes in with a 25 million pound offer for him. You take it. I'm not saying they will, but you take it because you paid 27, you recouped 25. Okay, 2 million, and you chalk that up to the guys that were sitting in this seat before me. I don't like the move that they made. So, well, it's a difficult situation to be in with the club. And I know that we all, want to see the kid play, but we want to see the kid play. Let's remember one thing though. We want to see the kid play because of the price tag. That's why we want to see him play. We're seeing the things that he's doing at Nice and all this and that. But remember too, this is a much different league than France. So that's the other caveat that European players who come here from another league, it's like, I know they're playing the same game, but this league's a little faster. It's a little tougher. And I don't know.
I personally think that he's physically what we need in that back line. He's a 19-year-old kid. He has plenty of time to adapt. It's not like we spent 40 million on a 20-something-year-old, and he's a young kid that can still adapt. But that's just me.
The only thing that'll drive me nuts with this, I mean, it's a great argument, and I don't disagree with necessarily with anything you're saying. But the thing that floors me is Arsenal supporters who Saliba has to start right away. Now they said this when he was bought before it was announced that he was being loaned right back to Saint Etienne. It was he has to start right away. He has to start day one. He starts. You've never seen this kid kick a ball yet. He has to start. He has to start right away. And I promise you that in that first game, if he would have David Luiz'd it, gotten a red card, given away a penalty, the whole 9 yards, this dude stinks. Get him out of here. It's just like, if he comes in and he doesn't make it, if we give him that chance, most Arsenal fans are going to absolutely abuse him and say, what is the club doing? Why didn't you sell him? Why didn't you sell? So you've got to understand that if you want this kid to come back in, then you've got to be willing to ride with that kid as a fan, as a supporter. You got to be willing to ride with that kid through his mistakes. It's not, he made an errant kick here. Bench him. And here's the other thing too. He starts over Holding right away. Why? Because he cost 27 million pounds? No. Right now, whether you like it or not, Rob Holding is your starting right-sided center back. Until he's not, he is. That goes for next year as well. He's going to be your starting right-sided center back until he's not, until he plays himself out of that role. So,
all right. Well, I think we've covered all of the topics that we wanted to, and then some. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I really hope you guys enjoyed this show. I enjoyed, being here with you guys as much as this has been awesome. I love this. And we're talking about a win, options,
we quit talking about a win like an hour ago.
Yeah. This is awesome. So you guys, before you leave, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Dislike it if you didn't like it. But I think everybody in the chat, from what I've seen and the fact that you're still here, you probably like it. So I've been Jess. My tag is right there.
You've been Jess?
Anyways.
Are you still Jess? Or are you somebody new?
Okay, I'm Jess, and I've been your host, and you can follow me at It's Jessinho. You can follow Tannor at The Bearded Gooner. And before we go, let's just laugh at this guy one more time. Clown.
Back streets back. All
right, you guys, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.